This video is going to show you how you can add a brand new tenancy into Hammock and track those first rent payments. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click the Add Tenancy button. Once we do that, we now need to fill in the basic information, starting with the property. So I'm going to add in which property I'm adding it for. Then it's a really important question. So who actually collects the rent? So do you collect this rent directly from the tenant, in which case you get the full amount, or does an agent collect it on your behalf where they take a fee? And in my case, I use letting agent, so I'm going to select that option. Now I can choose the tenancy start date. Now I know that this tenant moved in November 2024. So I'm going to put in the start date. But if you are only planning on starting from the start of the tax year, you could absolutely just put your start date from April if you wanted to. We then need to add in the rental amount, which is $1,350, and that my tenants pay monthly. So I can leave that as it is. Now we need to add in the letting agent details. So first I'm going to add in my agent name. My agent also takes their fee monthly. You can choose whether you want to add that as a percentage or as a fixed amount. In my case, my agent charges 10% and VAT is not included. So I leave this switched off. The box on the right hand side will tell you what it expects your rent to be based on the information you've put in. So because my agent, I get $1,350 a month and my agent charges 10% plus VAT, this is the amount. So it's always worth checking that amount with one of your statements. Make sure you've got the right amount, because if I said that VAT was included, the amount would change. So do check this number. Then at the bottom, you've got the chart opportunity. Do you want to add tenant details? You don't need to, but I'm actually going to here because I think it's nice to have the tenant name attached. So I'm going to add in my tenant, John Smith, and create the tenancy. Now, because I've got my bank feed connected and because Hammock now knows the details of my transactions and my tenancy, it's gone through and found any transactions that look like they are payments from my agent. And you can see it's found quite a few here. So I'm going to select all of those and I'm going to track all of them in one go. Once I've done that, I can click continue and it's going to take me to the tenancy that I've created. So you can see the information here. We've got John Smith is the tenant. We've set it up that it's $1,350 a month, paid on the 23rd, and the tenancy start date was November 2024. My letting agent is moving on, and my agent charges 10% plus VAT, which is £162. Now, if we scroll down, Hammock is now going to show me the history of my transactions. And probably the first thing that you can see jumping out straight away is that I haven't tracked September and October or November. And that is likely because in those months when my agent paid me, there was an additional expense. So we're going to look at that in a second. But also just at the top here, you can see that there are arrears showing on the tenancy and that I need to fill in my rent table settings. So the first thing we're going to do is fill that in. So we're going to click here, rent table settings. Now, the first question it's going to ask you is, when do you actually want to track rent from? So obviously I've started at the start of the tenancy, but lots of landlords just want to start from the start of the tax year. So you can actually just say you just want to start from April 24, or you can choose a specific date yourself. As we're starting tracking from April, which is mid-tenancy, Hammock just wants to know, did that tenant already owe you any money? At that stage, if they did, you can choose one of these options. In my case, they were already up to date then, so there's no need for me to add an opening balance starting in April. And the payment day of my tenancy is the 23rd, so I don't need to change that. But if you do want to, you can do. So we're going to save our settings. And now we've been taken back to the tenancy table, but because I started from April 25, everything before that is not being included in the calculation of the arrears. But as you can see, I do have some months here that have not been tracked yet. So what we need to do is go into our bank transactions page, find those transactions, and we'll track these ones manually because they include expenses. So we're going to go over to the transaction screen. Now, the first payment I'm going to look for is in September. So I'm going to go back to September. And here's the payment from my letting agent. So I didn't get the full amount, which is why Hammock didn't pick it up initially, because I had some expenses included. So this month I only received $9.49 from the agent. All we do from here is we click on the transaction ourselves. We're just going to categorize that as rental income. We're going to select the property. We're going to select the tenant, John Smith. And this time Hammock knows, it tells me this is less than the normal expected amount of 1188. So it's just then asking me, would I like to create an expense for the remaining 239? Now I had some repairs that month, so I'm going to click yes. Then we just need to pick the category of the expense, which in my case would be maintenance. And within maintenance, you can see it could be all kinds of things, but we're just going to go for repairs and then click save. So now Hammock takes that £949 transaction and splits it into what it really represents, which is rent of £13.50, my agent fees, which it already knows I pay of £162, and that remaining has gone into repairs. And so now if we go back to the tenancies tab and go and look at John Smith, if we scroll down, here he is. So we go into here, and so now that September payment is now showing as paid. So all I would need to do now is go back to my transactions, find these other 2 months that also had additional expenses, categorize them and put the expense in there, and then your tenancy will be fully up to date.